So I think this one is going to be a long one. I'm going to upload it to Spotify like the other videos and podcasts. I have them on Spotify as the audio only, so you can hear it. You can download it and hear it over and over and over again, because for some people that is very helpful. And then I have the same audio but on YouTube with the pictures to it. And then for the ones that are visual and need that support, it's helpful. But this one is going to be a long one, and it's going to be uploaded to Spotify, so you can download it and hear it over and over, make notes, meditate, whatever you feel like doing to get this like under your skin, and use it as much as you need. It's because I received a question, and to another person that wrote me, I'm going to give a very, very extensive answer. So the question is, I know that I'm responsible for creating this illusion and all the suffering, and I feel that I need to do more. Otherwise, I feel so much guilt for not getting this. And to honor that question, because it's really a very honest question, and to honor that question, it throws me into a very, very long comment about our biochemical-psycho-endo-emotional self-created illusion of a reality. So, yep, hold on to your suspenders. This is going to be a good one. Okay, none of this is real. It's created by sensory experiences, collected in the brain, perceived, and then the brain adds the meaning to all that. And in that creation of the meaning, as someone believing itself to exist, happens. I'm talking about this in almost all my other videos and audios, so I'm not going to go into that one. You will find many videos and audios on my channels where I'm talking about this. So the someone believing itself to exist as you is in a complete illusion. And when we continue, I assume that you are aware of that. And if you need a reminder, then look back in some of the other videos. Otherwise, here we go. So someone believing itself to exist as you is in a complete illusion. But even though it's only an illusion, that illusion can be very painful. And why that is, and what you can do with that information, is what I'm going to talk about in this one. So none of it is real. Your entire perception of you and your life is nothing but an illusion. But that does not mean that it's not painful. And the question I received clearly displays that. The someone believing itself to exist as you is living in a life where you get fired and dumped and traumatized and sick and old, and eventually you're going to die. There's nothing to get about that, and there's nothing to do about that. There is, however, something to understand, something that needs to fall away, and non-identifying needs to happen. Otherwise, you cannot see through the illusion. You're going to believe that all of it is true, and you're going to believe that you are depressed, and you got fired, dumped, traumatized, sick, old, and eventually are going to die. So there's nothing you can do, but there's something you need to understand. Something that needs to fall away, or a non-identifying that needs to happen. And doing that, we're working within the illusion. It's work for the someone believing itself to exist as you. It's work for the ego. And the ego loves tasks and drama, and we're going to use that. We can use your intellect for this. And even though it's not the ego or the intellect that is going to be present in the real being, you can use your illusion and your intellect to get there. So this is impossible to talk about. So in order to do that, I'm going to create words to explain what I talk about, but none of them are real. Please keep that in mind. I only call them these words for the sake of ease of conversation. Okay, you are, and that is the becoming of the being. That is the truth. That is the real being. That is what is behind the falling away of the subject-object. But we're not talking about that today. But that is the only truth. You are. The someone believing itself to exist is the illusion as you. And I'm going to use two terms to explain this illusory existing. The one is the ego, and the other one is the authentic. Because the ego can fall away within the illusion, where the someone believing itself to exist as you, where that is, and that falling away then becomes the authentic. So within the illusion of your life, you have the ego on one side and you have the authentic on the other side. But both are within the illusion. Neither of them are real. And this split within the illusion is what most people experience when they become awakened. They experience a split between the ego and the authentic, and they feel awake and aware, but both are still within the illusion. So instead of feeling contracting with lives filled with anger and greed and jealousy and guilt and shame and low self-worth and striving, the falling away is creating a life where they feel expanding, and their lives are now filled with compassion and kindness and surplus and presence and peace and acceptance and calm. But both are still a part of the illusion. So me talking here now to you is me being authentic. I'm in the illusion with you listening in the illusion. And granted, it's much nicer for me to be authentic right now, because I'm not really bothered if anyone ever hears this, and I'm not really concerned if anybody understands this. So it's much nicer for me. If I was in the ego, I would be bothered and concerned if someone listened, and if the ones listening would approve what I'm saying or like what I'm saying. So being in the authentic, in the illusion, is much nicer for me while I'm making this. But that it's nicer does not make it real. I could be, caught in my ego. I could be super concerned, and it wouldn't be nice, but it would not be real either, because both are just opposites within the illusion, like the yin and yang, and neither is the real being. I usually describe it with the old optic illusion, it's a picture of the rabbit and the duck, and your brain cannot comprehend both images at the same time. So the brain switches from one to the other while you look at the picture. You can find so many different optical illusion pictures. They're great. And the point being that when you look at those pictures, you cannot see both at the same time. Only one can be present for the brain at any time. And it's the same with this illusion and the real being. But it's also the same with the illusion and non-duality. But it's also like that within the illusion. So you have the illusion of the ego as the participant, and at the same time within the illusion you have the authentic as the observer. You cannot have both at the same time. You can either participate and suffer, or you can observe and be present. Now, This is where it's getting super, super interesting for me and my nerdy biochemical understanding of the world, because there are specific chemicals and hormones released depending on which illusion you perceive. We end up with what I call a biochemical-psycho-endo-emotional self-created illusion of reality. And let me just pick it apart for you here. The biochemical are all the chemicals and all the precursors of the chemicals within the biology. The psycho is the psychology and the perception of self and the surroundings. The endo is from endocrinology, which is where the hormones are released or there's an absence of release. And emotional are the feelings, thoughts, perception, assumptions that are taking place as a result of the biochemical, psychological, endocrinological experience, and that results in the biochemical, psycho-endo-emotional self-created illusion of reality. And I think this is so amazing to talk about. I think it's so much fun. So it's what I'm talking about in every single video I make. I make multiple videos, and I'm going to make many, many, many more where I talk about what that release or absence of a specific chemical and a specific hormone, what it does to us, and what specific perception of reality arises due to that release or absence. So I'm not going to go into that either in this one. I just want to say that, yeah, this is where I get all excited. But even though that release or absence is happening, I can assure you that even though none of this is real, and for the someone believing itself to exist, it's not real. The ego or the authentic someone is not real. It feels very, very real. And it's a bit, if you imagine like one of those turntables that disc jockeys that they had. I don't know if they still do, but when I was young, they had like those turntables. That is kind of like your biological self. That is what is happening in a body at any point during the day and the night. That if you turn, something, if you dial it up a little bit, then others go down. And it's the same with your body. There's a constant exchange in the body where a release is signaling for something else to go down. So a dial is going up while another dial is going down, and the other way around. Something is going down and something else is going up. Your entire emotional range, and that includes all your thoughts, all your feelings, your entire physical appearance, all that is happening because of your endobiochemistry, because of those dials going up and down all the time in your body. And that is creating thoughts and feelings and assumptions and what you perceive as you, as your personality, what you perceive as other people's personality. It's like a kaleidoscope. Remember those that you put up in front of your eyes when you were a kid? Just the smallest tweak and it changes the entire picture. Your body is like that. So if you feel guilt or shame or anger or fear, you can only feel that because there's either an absence of a specific hormone or an absence of specific chemicals. And if you feel happiness or belonging or joy and confidence, you can only feel that because there's a presence of specific hormones or a presence of a specific chemical substances. So yes, it's all an illusion. But as Einstein said, it's a very persistent one. And this is what I think that he meant. It's at least how I understood what he meant with that quote. So, watching non-duality videos that are telling you that what you feel is not real, it might in some cases actually make matters worse. And I'm not talking about lying at all. I'm not talking about saying that it is real just because you feel it to be real, because it's not. It's not real at all. It's only perceived as real. And to me, that is kind of like the true message of non-duality, that Non-duality is the ending of something that is not happening. So to dismiss the perceived reality and saying that it's not worthy of our attention, I find that cruel, and I find it like gaslighting. Because if you feel sadness due to an absence or presence of chemicals or hormones. And if you feel guilty because of a presence or an absence of chemicals and hormones. And if you feel low self-worth, it's the same. You feel it because you're getting signals to feel that. So no matter if you understand non-duality or not, what is. I mean, I can give you a glass of peptides and you will feel present in your authentic being when you drink that glass of peptides. You can get a hug from somebody you love and you will immediately feel connected. And that happens because with the glass of peptides or with the hug, specific hormones are released. Before the hug, you might have had an absence of that hormone. During the hug, you started to release the hormones, and after the hug, you feel connected because the hormonal release happened and give you a sensation of being connected. It doesn't mean that you all of a sudden are connected, but you feel connected. So when I say that non-duality is the ending of something that is not happening, it's not the ending of that absence or release of chemicals or hormones or what they create. It's the ending of identifying with what they create. So yes, you're not real. The other person is not real. The hug happens within the illusion that we have about a perceived reality. But inside that perceived reality, the release of that specific hormone happened. And in that biology, in the perceived reality, an apparent release of specific chemicals happened, and that resulted in a specific perception of the someone believing itself to exist within that illusion of reality. And then you feel connected. And that's why I understand why it's important to talk about that none of this is real. But I really, really profoundly feel it's equally important to acknowledge what is perceived as real. Because it is shaping and creating us. And it is creating a question like the one that I had where someone feels guilty and feel as not doing it right. And my heart bleeds for a person like that. It really, really does. I'm so sorry that you feel that way. Because you identify with the hormones that is released, and you identify with the lack of hormones, or with the absence of the hormones. And then because you identify, you then believe that it's you. And what I would like to do with this audio here is to tell you that you haven't done anything wrong. It's chemicals. You're shaped because of the chemicals that are either there or not there. It's not real. But the feeling that you have, you can create a non-identifying with the feeling. So you create a space where the feelings are there, but you do not identify. You don't make it into being you, because it's not. It's just chemicals. So yes, you're not real, and the other person is not real, and the hug happens within the illusion that we have about our perceived reality. But inside that perceived reality, it feels real. And we all know this. You know, that's why we're not drinking bleach or robbing a bank or going on a killing spree. Because we know that inside the perceived reality that is a complete illusion, it happens. So the difference lies in the identifying with that perceived reality. In the Pali Canon, the Buddha, he says, before enlightenment, I chopped wood and collected water. After my enlightenment, I chopped wood and collected water. So nothing changed within the perceived reality. No, I'm not the Buddha. So I can say this. I can say basically exactly the same, a little bit different, with many more words and much more complicated, but it might clarify what I want to talk about. Before your identifying falls away, you will have a specific biochemical-psycho-endo-emotional pattern that you identify with. And from that, and within that, you create your perception of reality. After your identifying falls away, you might still have the same biochemical-psycho-endo-emotional pattern. However, since you no longer identify with it, your perception of reality will be completely different. And that is why you hear non-duality teachers say that nothing has changed and yet everything is different. Because when you no longer identify, nothing is important. But that does not make your life unimportant. Your values might change, but there's no longer any identifying with those values. And that creates space for what really is. So you might lose your leg, but you don't feel anything is lost. And you might lose your life, but you know nothing is lost. The only thing that is changed is the shift in a self-created perceived illusion. It's a dissolving of subject-object. Okay. So now I'm going to talk about what happens within that illusion. And I'm aware that it's going to be an intellectual conversation, which only can happen within the illusion. So kindly keep that in mind too. I'm going to give an outer explanation to an inner experience, which is basically impossible, and we can dance a color afterwards. It's just as impossible. But the problem with the inner experience is that many of us get it once we have had an intellectual understanding of the inner experience is not. So, once you see, once the simplicity of it shows itself and your identifying starts to fall away, the ego is going to throw doubt into the mix. And that will take you for another trip in the roundabout. So what you're going to experience in a second is that I'm going to mention lots of different scenarios and you're going to get it. And as soon as you get it, the ego is going to present itself, create doubt, and then you're going to fall back to the first step. It's kind of like the first two steps, which is exactly this, a non-identifying and doubt. And most people spend their entire lives in this back and forth because within the illusion we're split into. So as I said, we have the ego persona that is a participant. It's where all the emotions and all the feelings are. And then we have the authentic persona or the genuine persona or the honest persona, which is the observer. And the observer is not in the feelings because it's not participating, it's observing. It's kind of like being an anthropologist, observing what is happening but not engulfed into the emotions and into the feelings, which means that you have kind of like an overview. It's like, you can also imagine if you have like a maze and the ego is running around in the maze trying to find its way out, where the authentic or the genuine or the honest person, which is the observer, is standing on 5th floor and looking down on the maze and can immediately see the way out because there are no emotions involved in it. It's why we often are very good at giving advice to other people because we're not emotionally involved in it at all. You're standing on the 5th floor and you don't really care if people take the advice or not because it has nothing to do with you. Being the observer, you keep that distance in you, or the I wouldn't call it distance, but rather call it an overview where you're not engulfed in all the emotions. You don't have the chemical release that is pulling you down. you manage to have a distance where you observe what is happening instead of believing that it is happening. And for most people, that dance back and forth between those two, because a lot of times you will have an insight which puts you in the seat of the observer up on the 5th floor, and you can look down and you have the view of the observer. And then something happens, somebody says something, and you're straight back into the emotions, or you create the doubt yourself. You doubt that what you're feeling is right. It can't be this easy, the ego says, and then you think, oh, I better meditate, I better eat, I better, all that. I shouldn't do and all that. And then you're back in the doubt, back in the roundabout again, and you're part of the participant again. You're back in the soup of emotions again. And that back and forth is where the majority of people live. Those two steps are repeated over and over and over and over. So the ego persona is a very contracted energy that is manifesting itself with very specific, with a very, very specific perception of reality. It has very specific life views, and it has very specific thoughts and actions tied into those life views. And it is created by a very predictable biochemical-psycho-endo-emotional pattern. But the same goes for the authentic persona. As I said, it's the same thing. Both are in the illusion. It's exactly the same. It's just the opposite, which means that it's exactly the same. The authentic persona has an expansive energy, which means that it is manifesting itself in another but very, very specific pattern with specific perception of reality and with equally very specific life views, very specific thoughts and actions. And it is also created by a very predictable biochemical-psycho-endo-emotional pattern. And in those two opposites, you have the first two steps of falling away, the identifying and the doubt. So what we're going to go through now is a list I have made. It's not a full list, obviously, because I can possibly not. It's impossible to do that, my goodness. The topics that I mentioned are only the ones that I have picked out today when I was sitting and writing it down. And it's only for you to get an idea of when you're authentic and when you're not. And when we go through it, then please remember unconditional acceptance. You don't have to change anything. Just acknowledge it. So if I say something and I'm hitting, straight, I'm hitting it straight on. It feels like I'm talking exactly about you. And immediately you feel the need to change or do something. Please fill yourself with unconditional acceptance. You don't have to change anything. Just acknowledge it. It's a super, super important point. Because if you hear something and you realize something, and immediately you want to change something, then you are actually locking yourself into the contracting energy of the ego. You're locking yourself into I am not, I should be. And that attitude is not doing you any favors. So if you hear something and realize something, just let it be. Acknowledge that you have heard and realized something, and do not make any change whatsoever. It will make you fall into a non-identifying, and you will go from the non-identifying into doubt. And as soon as you fall into doubt, then you are locked into the identifying, and then you are taking another trip in the roundabout. So just let it be. Just be with what is. Have unconditional acceptance to whatever comes up. Okay, so I'm gonna read them with the ego perception first, and then the authentic perception as a comparison. And they're meant for you to see through the contracting energy of the ego and the participant, and the be in the authentic and the observant part of you. So the first example is the ego strive for recognition. When you're in the ego, you need people to acknowledge you. You have the need to be clever, to say the right things, to look the right way. You have the need for other people to acknowledge you and as you, but they need to do it in the right way. If somebody is paying you a compliment, they need to say it and do it in the right way. You will have had experiences in your life where somebody has complimented you for something, said well done, and you haven't felt that it was enough. They didn't do it the right way. That's the ego. That's where you have an expectation about things being in a certain way, and if people don't live up to that expectation, they have done something wrong. They should know better. They should do it right. The other part of that, I just want to add that when you're there, then the release of hormones is pulling you into a black hole. It's like quicksand, because the hormones that are released is giving you even more doubt, and you're gonna be in a lack, in a feeling of lack when that happens, and that will put you into trying to do and be and say more, and since people are still not doing it the way that you want them to say it, and they're still not doing what you expect them to do, then you will next time feel even more neglected and overseen and not heard. The opposite of that is the observer. And the observer, the authentic you, is where you're standing with authenticity. You're you. You don't pretend to be anything. And if you pretend to be anything and people are not living up to expectations, then you feel, oh my goodness, I wanted them to acknowledge me more. Okay, do I really need an acknowledgement for me to feel that I'm okay as I am? No, not really. How odd that I had that feeling. So you're authentic. You don't strive to be or say or do or act or look or anything in a certain way. You're just you, which means that you have both feet planted on the floor. You're grounded, and no matter what other people say about you, you know that it's just their opinion. Whatever you try to do in your life, whatever people think of that is none of your business. It has nothing to do with you, whatever people think of you. So the one is striving, the participant, the ego is striving for recognition because they're in the feelings, in the lack of chemistry, and really, really want to be filled up by the right chemistry. So they are craving the right words and the right recognition, where the observer is in a place where whatever happens, and I'm me, and that's fine. The next point is a little bit the same, because the ego is viewing the world from the outside in. How do I look? How do I think other people see me? How do I think and perceive that other people perceive me? Which is like an illusion on top of an illusion. How can you possibly expect or think what people think of you? Then you do your hair and somebody might think, why is the hair done like that? You have no control about what is happening in the other one. But when you are in the ego and you have the lack of chemicals that can only be filled by a pseudo release, which is going to be a chase, because you're never going to release the hormones that you actually need. It's a pseudo release. It's a pseudo chase. And you perceive the world from the outside in. So it's you are judging you with the eyes that you think the others have when they look at you. So it's very much the I am not, I should be mentality. It's very much about having the right car, the new phone, the beautiful partner, the right education, all that material stuff. It's very much about likes and clicks, and there's a lot of scrolling going on for you to figure out how you can be right, and for so you can be in a way where you think that other people is going to approve of you. And the observer is from the inside out. It's more about how does it feel to be me right now? And then those are the people where you see them and there's like this radiance. You know, there's just this being or this presence or this authenticity, whether they're just in it. And there's not the if they come with the feeling of I'm not or should be, then because they're observing, they can observe, oh goodness, right now I feel that I'm not and I feel that I should be. Okay, I'm just going to breathe. I'm just going to be with myself. I'm going to connect with how it feels for me to be in this body, in this world, at this time right now. And then I'm going to feel calm. And that's where, for some people, going for a run helps, or meditating helps, or it's different what helps you getting the observant part from the inside out. Remember, none of this is real. The two things I'm sitting and talking about is only happening biochemically in a perceived reality. It's not real at all. Okay. The next one is self-serving. And the self-serving that's the ego that is in the emotions. It's with the chemical and the endocrinological release. So hormones and chemicals are in the body or are absent from the body. And there's like this feeling of hunger, you know, what's in it for me? How can I get something out of this situation? How can this improve my situation? Where we honestly believe that we are here on the planet alone and everybody are extras in the movie where you are the main character. That is when you are in your ego and you are participating in it. When you are observing from that standpoint, then it's more about how can I help? How can I contribute? Oh, you feel like I'm an extra. Okay, how can I help you? How can I help you in getting where you want to be? So there's no attachment at all to being in a certain way or to being the main character in this film, because you know it's just an illusion. It's just an illusion. But you can support and help other people, no matter whatever belief they have, because it's got nothing to do with you. So if they're angry, you can listen to their anger without being persuaded and believing what they're saying to be true. It's just an emotion. They have a chemical release. It's not true at all. It's very real for them because they're in the participant. They're drowning in the hormones of anger. You know? They're drowning in it. And because you're standing on the 5th floor and you can see how much they're battling in the maze, you can just be with it. Be with them. Create space for it. The next one is also a part of the I'm not or should be, when you are locked in your ego, where you have a feeling that enough is never enough. Enough is never enough. No matter how you play the +1 game, you can always do better. You can always do quicker. You can always do it more, faster, higher. Always. This I'm not or should be is... I mean, when you scroll on Facebook or Insta or Twitter or any of the other places where you can scroll, they're always sponsored ads. All of them, every single one of them are telling you that you are not and you should be. And if you buy this or do that, then you will be. And it's a lie. It's a complete lie. But that feeling of lack, because you're not connected, because you're in that illusion of yours, and you have a lack of specific hormones, that profound feeling of lack, it's so persuasive that you actually believe it. You actually believe that the right education or the right partner or the right clothes or the right whatever, that's going to do it. If you just lose 5 pounds, then you're going to be there. If you just get this education, it's such a profound point of view that we actually believe it to be true. But it's because we're in the one that is perceiving, in the one that is participating. And because you have this lack of hormones, that is what you're actually lacking. Then that lack, we're trying to fill it up with everything. With food and with drugs and with alcohol and with work and with love and with sex and with lots of things that we're trying to fill it up with. And it's because we have that I'm not, I should be. We're addressing an issue in the wrong way. I mean, if you're thirsty, it doesn't help to go for a ride in a Ferrari. You're still thirsty. So because we have that biological minus in our chemicals, we try to fill it up in lots of different ways. And it's just an illusion. The biochemical lack is just, it feels very, very real, but it's part of the illusion. And in that illusion, you can put yourself in the observing part. You can put yourself in the authentic part, where you feel, oh my goodness, in me right now, I feel such a lack. I feel so inadequate. I feel that I'm not okay. I feel that I'm not enough. Oh my goodness, can I be with that feeling in my body? Can I sit with that feeling of lack without doing anything and just have unconditional acceptance to what I feel and be with the observer? So instead of believing it because you are in all the emotions, you observe what is happening. Oh my goodness, I get a knot in my tummy when I'm thinking of how inadequate I am. Okay. And then you're just with it. You're just being with it. And all of a sudden, you will feel that in that lack, there's a huge abundance. Because unconditional acceptance is abundance. That is ever embracing and ever being with. And that is creating the calm and the fulfillment that you experience when you're lacking. And the funny thing, and this is what is really, I love this, why I love this so much, because the funny thing is that your hormones and your chemicals actually follow suit. You can sit and have a profound feeling of inadequacy. And by observing and not jumping into the bandwagon with all the emotions, but just observing, you can turn that around and start to release what you're lacking. And then you will feel the abundance. Remember, both of them are still illusions. We're not even talking about the plane where you just are. This is on the illusion on the physical plane. But because there is the biochemical-psycho-endo-emotional reality around us, you can create, whatever. And that leads me to the next one. It's a little bit about the doubt. That as soon as you start to feel good, I experienced this so many times. I've experienced this so many times with my groups. As soon as somebody starts to get in contact with the feeling of inadequacy, and they observe the inadequacy, they don't, live it because they're not in the midst of all the emotions. They're observing what is happening, and they're observing the inadequacy. They start to feel abundant because unconditional acceptance, give you that abundance. And as soon as that happens, the ego kicks in with doubt. This can't be right. This can't be happening. I'm sorry, an alarm just went off. This can't be right. This can't be happening. This can't be it. It can't be this easy. You can't just regulate your hormones like that. You can't just... And then the ego dismisses. And as soon as that happens, you're plunge back into all the emotions, back into the participation of it. Lose your footing in the observing part. And so the opposite of the dismissing is the unconditional acceptance. So as soon as you start to dismiss, you create a space of unconditional acceptance for the dismissing. Oh my goodness, I felt inadequate. I started to feel good. Now I dismiss my feeling good. Okay, can I create a space where I'm actually feeling better, but I'm dismissing what I am feeling? Can I create space for that? But that doesn't make any sense. No, it doesn't. It doesn't make any sense. Can I be in a body where I am deciding to do something that absolutely does not make any sense? And that's why you understand that you don't have to change anything. You know, you don't have to change anything. There's nothing that you need to change or do. You just have the unconditional acceptance of what is. And it's the same with the next point. The ego tends to see everything as me. When we're in the ego, we feel so important. We feel so important. I am unique and I'm special and I'm so important. I am the main character and everybody else are extras in my movie of the life. We feel so important. And it's only because we're standing, hip high in emotions and chemicals, As soon as you pull yourself up on the 5th floor and you are observing, you can see that you are of absolutely no significance whatsoever. You're not unique in any way. There is an us, and the us is what is. Remember, when the whole subject-object falls away, there is no you and I. There is only an us. There is only that energy that all of us is a part of. And that is what you are starting to see when you come up on the 5th floor and you look down on the maze on all the emotions. And that leads me to the next one, because the ego will by now, your ego will by now, probably have thought, oh my goodness, if I listen to this every single day, multiple times, every single day, then I will get it, I will understand it, I will be there, I will release the hormones, I will be there, and then I'm done, then I have understood it, and I'm finally in my goal, I'm finally there. Where, no, you won't. Oh my goodness, no. The ego is so goal-oriented, it's all about achieving, it's all about getting there. Where, as soon as you get it, you die. Why are you in a rush? Why are you in a rush? This is brilliant. This is lovely. Life is happening, Spring is coming, birds are singing. You're waking up in a body and you're falling asleep in a body, and you breathe and you drink water and you have a life, and you can walk around and you can observe everything around you. You can see that you are of no importance whatsoever. Not important at all, and you're just in the process. And by that, you have actually achieved what you thought you could only achieve by getting into the goal, Because it's already here. It's already happening. You're already there. You have the unconditional love in you, the unconditional acceptance in you already. It's already there. There's nothing that needs to be discovered. It's already there. And by being in the process, you allow whatever is to be. Nothing needs to happen. because you're already there. You're in the process, exactly where you're supposed to be, exactly where it's happening. So it's exactly like it's supposed to be. The other part that the ego really, really wants is entertainment and drama, because the ego tend to be in a minus of chemicals and hormones, and tend to be, this is something that especially autists and ADHD, they experience, that we are constantly chasing the dopamine. And for that to happen, it's a lot of entertainment, a lot of scrolling, a lot of drama, and a lot of everything that we actually don't need. So that is the one side. And you will also experience that with this. You might sit and listen and you might understand, and then all of a sudden you create a lot of drama in your life, and the ego loves that. If you can't meditate because your mind is interrupting you all the time, then this is a part of it. The mind is telling you that you're doing it wrong, that it can't be this easy, it can't be, just sitting, it doesn't work for me and all that. Or you get bored. You get bored with it. It's the ego that gets bored, because the ego needs entertainment and drama all the time. When you are not in the maze running around and trying to find your way out, but you're on the 5th floor and you're just observing what is happening, you are completely fine with the stillness, simplicity, and contentment. And contentment is a word that I'm very, very often using, because contentment is the opposite of greed. Whatever you want in your life right now, let's take an example. Think of something that you really, really want in your life right now. You want that in your life because you perceive that you are missing what you want. So you have something, but you want something else. You know what I mean? That's greed. You have something that you could be content about, but you're not. You want something else. You have a car, you want a bigger car. You have a job, you want another job. You have a partner, you want not to have a partner or another partner. You are traveling the world, you want a family, or you have a family and you want to travel the world. So you have something and you want something else. It's also for all of you that, want to lose weight. You have a body, you want a different body, Contentment is realizing that what you want, you already have. It might not be how the ego expects it to be and wants it to be, but you already have it. So the contentment is it's a topic that I very, very often teach, and very, very often come back to when I have consultations or guide people in my groups, that a lot of things that we want in our lives, we already have. It's not the way we want it, but we actually have it. And it's only the ego that is obstructing the enjoyment of what we already have. It's only greed obstructing that. And instead of all the entertainment and drama and scrolling and all of that, the opposite is the stillness, simplicity, and contentment. Find stillness, find the simplicity. Get into an observing role where you are with what already is. That's the opposite of the entertainment and the drama. And the next thing is it's in line with the one where I talked about the me and versus the us. It's talking instead of listening. When you meet people, the best way to get out of your own way, best way to get out of the emotions and out of all the feelings, it's to say absolutely nothing. Get out of the way. Observe yourself, observe the other person, listen to what the other person says, observe what is happening in the other person, what is happening in you. And if you feel the need to talk, figure out what that is about. You don't have to stop talking if you have the need to talk. Then have unconditional acceptance for you wanting to talk and do not wanting to listen. There's something that you don't want to hear. And it might not be about what the other person is talking about. It might be about what is going on in you. There's something going on in you that you do not want to hear. You're about to realize something and you do not want to realize it. And that's why we talk. In my teachings, when we talk about boundaries, there are 3 types of boundaries we can have in ourselves. And when I talk about that, one of the ways some people avoid to work with the boundaries is to create a wall of noise. And that's where they, you know the person, the ones that talk, never ever listens, talk all the time. There's not really any topics that they talk about. It's just the talking for the sake of talking, the talking of filling out empty space so they won't feel. And that's a protection mechanism that needs lots of compassion from the person talking, but also from everybody else around the person talking. And then there's a good one. This is a really, really good one. It's the comparing. Oh my goodness, the ego loves the drama of comparing. And a lot of people, they start to work with themselves, they work with their spirituality, they may start to meditate and working with becoming more aware, but they still have the constant comparing. It's still the outside in. It's still the I am not, I should be. So they compare themselves with everybody else, where they either come out as the winner or they come out as the loser and need to improve and do better. That can only be met with compassion. My goodness, you really, really think that you need to be anybody else than who you already are. You really think you're not okay. You really believe that whatever you do is not enough. That can only be met with compassion. Then there's the mortal and the immortal. And the mortal is the one, the ego, when we're in the midst of all our emotions and we are very afraid of losing. So we cling to things we really, really like. First we crave and we strive for getting it, then we get it, and then we cling and are afraid of losing it. And that constant battle for keeping what we perceive as we have finally got and we don't want to lose means that we can never ever be happy. We're not happy when we're striving to get it, and we're not happy when we are fighting to keep it. The immortal is the one where you know about impermanence. And in this illusion of reality that we have, where we perceive ourselves in having and being biological beings, cells decay. You will get sick, you will get old, and you will die. It's part of it. And as soon as you're okay with that, you become you change your perception in a way where you know that nothing ever really disappears. I think I'm going to make another audio about this, because this is about the subject-object thing that falls away completely, but that's for another day. The next one is really good. It's about the emotions of anger, fear, guilt, and shame. And anger, fear, guilt, and shame are such a motivating factor, because we have the feeling of anger, fear, guilt, and shame. We don't want that feeling, so we do everything to get away from that feeling. And if you try to look through your day that you had today and see how many parts of your life during today, your thoughts during today was about one of these, or all of them. I mean, why limit yourself? You can have all of it, of the anger, fear, guilt, and shame. Then also see that you never ever come out on top. No matter what you do, there's always a plus one. You can always do it better. There's always the striving, the fighting, the focus on getting out of that feeling. Where when you are in the observing part, you have a space of loving kindness to when you feel guilt, like the one that asked me the original question, feel so guilty about me not getting it. I know none of this is real, and if I'm creating all this, I feel so guilty for doing that. Why do I do that? Meet yourself with loving kindness. Meet yourself. This is an illusion. You have a lack of a hormone that creates that repetitive feeling, and as long as that lack of hormone is, your perception will be shaped by that. Put yourself up in the observing role. Have compassion and loving kindness towards you having that perception. And then just be with it. It's a lack of a specific hormone. You can't change it. You haven't got the knowledge how to change it. You don't know how to do it right now. And it's not really relevant right now. Right now you're sitting with an emotion. You have a feeling of guilt. Then just create space for that. Be with you with that guilt. Meet yourself with loving kindness. And that's the same with the next one, with defensive versus being peaceful. It's the battling, the same one, next one again, with the fighting, striving, focus on what I can do and say. If you meet yourself with loving kindness, if you just are, and you're observing and you're creating a space for yourself where you have unconditional acceptance to what is, then all of it ends. The I am not or should be striving to get out of it and to be something else. It's an illusion. Everything is an illusion. You trying to meditate yourself out of it, or cold bath yourself out of it, or green smoothie yourself out of it. You can't do yourself out of it because it's just an illusion. The chemical release you have when you fight and strive is going to create even more battle in you. It's specific hormones that gives you the perception of danger. And you release more hormones when you try to strive and battle and get yourself out of it. Where if you put yourself in the observer role, you actually relax the endocrine system that is creating that feeling of fighting. And that gives you the calm and gives you the surplus for that too much hormones that you have is going to be less, and by that you're also perceiving less fighting and less striving. And it puts me to the next one, which is one of the points that we're working with when I work with this. I'm going to make audios and videos about all of it, so no worries. It's the blaming, shaming, complaining and explaining. The ego tend to find faults with everything. If you're in the ego, you have probably already made a list of all the things I have said that is wrong. And you're going to look it up and Google it and prove it and all of that. It's because the blaming, shaming, complaining is activated. It's hormonal. The only reason why you think that is important is because of your hormones. If you put yourself in the observing role, you know that whatever happens, whatever people say about you, blame you, complain about you, shame you about, no matter what, you perceive it as, you can observe it and see it as opportunities that would otherwise not have happened. It's not true. I mean, if somebody says, "Oh my goodness, you're so arrogant," that doesn't make you arrogant. It's just another person's opinion. I mean, that person could say you got $1 million on your account. That wouldn't give you $1 million on your account. It's the same thing. No matter what anybody is saying about you or blaming you for, or complaining about you, or shaming you about. It's not true just because somebody says it. It's not true just because you think it. It's just hormones. It's just chemistry, nothing else. You don't have to believe it. It's like if somebody says the sky is green. You're not all of a sudden going to change your life completely because somebody says the sky is green. But whatever you believe in, that's another thing. We tend to, people are saying a lot of things during the day that you don't notice at all. And then they say one thing and you believe it and you ruminate about it and you create an argument in your mind about it. That is interesting, because that echo that you have in you about that one thing that they said, that's interesting. Observe it. Figure out, this is interesting. Of all the things I've heard today, that was the thing I heard. That was the thing I noticed. That's interesting. That's super, super interesting. It's not real, so you can actually look at it without anything else but just creating space and accepting it. And the same goes with impatience, wanting things to happen quicker than they does. Full acceptance is that things happen when they're supposed to happen. You can't force anything. You can't force anything to be in a different way than it actually is. It's just another example of the ego wanting to control and believe that it can control things. You can't. When you're in the observing, the only thing you can do is just seeing how things fall. It's like playing Mikado and you want to decide where all the sticks they fall. You can't. It just happens, There's no point of it anyway. It's not meaning that because they fall that way, that means that and that. No. It's complete random how the Mikado sticks they fall. So just look at it and take it from there. It's very much about everything I have said so far. You cannot fix it. You cannot try to do better. You cannot try to improve yourself. What you can do is creating space to what is. So every single comparison I have just given you, in either the contracting energy of the ego or the expanding energy of the authentic, neither are real. Please remember that. Neither are real. They're only experienced as real. And that is due to the biochemical-psycho-endo-emotional pattern of each of them. So each view is shaped into that specific view by chemistry, either as a lack or a presence of a specific chemical compound. And it's so important to remember that each of them really feels so real because they're backed up by emotions and feelings. And that takes us to the gap. And the gap, I'm not going to talk about it now. I'm just going to say that the gap is kind of like a timeout with reflection. I'm going to talk about it in another podcast. What I want to do now is just saying that it exists. I'm going to make another podcast where I'm talking about how you access the gap, and no matter what condition you're in, no matter what chemicals are present or not present, you can create the gap and you can access a reflection no matter what. For now, I just want to say that shift from the ego to the authentic, it happens within a gap of reflection. And that calm and reflection then creates a space where you can unfold the unconditional acceptance of what is, and not trying to change it, but just creating a space for what is. So, back to the original question. The question was, I know I'm responsible for creating this illusion and all of this suffering, and I feel a need to do more. Otherwise, I feel so much guilt for not getting this. Do you now see that you cannot do yourself out of this? You can only be. You can only stay with what is and create unconditional acceptance to whatever biochemical, psycho-endo-emotional pattern you are in. The more you fight, the more you're going to create chemistry that will let you sink more and more deeper and deeper into it, because you're identifying with it. By not identifying with the guilt, but just allowing it to be there, the more you're not identifying with the unfair accusations that you are making, but instead understanding that they happen because of chemistry. The suffering happens because of chemistry. Yes, it's all self-created, I agree with that. And yes, it's all an illusion, but drinking bleach, even though you have poured a glass of bleach yourself and you are drinking it, it's still going to be painful. So create space of that. That emotional bleach that you're drinking is self-created, yes. But if you no longer identify yourself with that, a lot of the suffering will automatically disappear. You're not thinking your thoughts. Thoughts are thinking themselves. And just like you're not in control of the smelling of a strawberry, or you're not in control of the hearing of a dog bark, it just happens. There's nothing to identify with. We experience pain. That is inevitable. But the suffering we create ourselves, because suffering comes from a repeating pattern of the pain in our minds, and soon the chemistry will follow, and then you have suffering. So focusing on the shift from the ego to the authentic, it's demanding an awareness in the moment, and that's also why it's called to be awake, because you have to be awake. You're present in the now with no attachment. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you are in the non-dual state, which is fine. It's a step in that direction where you are you and not who you were taught to be. So it's a step in a direction where you're no longer identifying with the perception of the biochemical, psycho-endo-emotional, self-created illusion of reality. But remember, awake is not better than asleep, because you can be either and then you die. So I hope that you understand that one is not better than the other. It's only the ego that is going to go into a competition about being authentic in order to come out as the conqueror of all this. And by that you have just locked yourself into the ego. You can't say that yin is better than yang. They only exist, both of them exist because of one another, and it makes no difference if you're in the ego or if you're in the authentic, because both are nothing, both are illusions. Being authentic might be more pleasant and might be more rewarding while you're spending time in the illusion. But on the other hand, the ego gives many learning opportunities that otherwise would never have happened. So one is not better than the other. Both of them are nothing. Both of them are part of an illusion that does not exist. And when what never was falls away, nothing has changed and everything is different. I wish you well.